Recording in progress.
Is it recording? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's recording.
We are talking today about the topic of inclusion in Australia. Why are you that into the topic of inclusion, or why are you bothering and are so passionate about the topic of inclusion in Australia?
I'm incredibly passionate about it, firstly because I'm a wheelchair user myself, but it's not just about me, it's about everybody else who needs an inclusive environment. But it's about the other users who can also make use of these things as well. So selfishly, it's all about me. My husband and I travel, but we also just go out for coffee and want to, get into a store to buy something, and often we can't do that. So there's a business reason for it, that businesses need to make money, and as I've said many times before, my legs don't work, but my credit card does. So I look at it both ways. As a business model, there's reasons for inclusion, but there's a good humanity reason for it as well, that we're just people who want to go about our lives, and inclusion is a really great way to just let me live my life like everybody else. Put a ramp in, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, that's true. So one personal question regarding your situation. Are you always in a wheelchair, or are you able to do a few steps, or can you walk a bit, like a few meters, or is it mandatory that you use a wheelchair?
I'm in the chair all day, every day. I can stand, and I would say I can walk, but it's ugly walking. So the only time I've ever walked was down the aisle on my wedding day, and Mum was on one arm, Dad was on the other arm, and I took 10 steps, and it was wobbly, and so I don't walk really. But I can stand up for a photo or something if I'm holding on to something, but I can't walk independently. Just for your listeners or your viewers, I'm a full-time wheelchair user. I have one prosthetic leg, and I had a stroke when I was 24, and that's when everything sort of snowballed, and spent a year in hospital, and all the amputations happened. My leg, my right toes, my fingertips, and ever since then, since my brain injury, I'm over 25% blind, and all the other disabilities happened as a result of that. So there's a few things going on, which is why I suppose I'm in the wheelchair, and I've got the prosthetic leg, and I don't just walk around with the prosthetic leg.
Yeah, you try to advocate for inclusion, as we try too.
Absolutely.
What would you say is your take on advocating, and how are you advocating for inclusion?
Well, my background pre-disability was as a business media marketing professional. So I take to advocacy with that lens, and I work with business and industry, helping them to be more diverse and inclusive, and speak to them about how to do it with that take. Present the data on the benefits of inclusion or disability. And as I said before, inclusion is not just a nice thing to do. There are real financial and commercial benefits to it as well. People with disabilities make up 200% of the population, but they're 20% market share. They're consumers. They spend money, believe it or not. They're consumers in your stores, but you may just have to make that store more accessible, whether that's a digital store online or a physical store.
Before we started the interview, you asked us about the accessibility in Europe, especially in Germany. So you're from Australia now, you're living in Brisbane. How would you describe the situation of accessibility in Australia, maybe in comparison to other countries, or first of all, in general?
Okay. Depends where you go. Let's swear. Some of it is absolutely rubbish, and some of it's brilliant. So I've been to parts of Australia where it's terrible, but other parts are brilliant. So um, where my husband and I live, we specifically live in an area that's fantastic, and we chose to live there for that reason, because I can independently get myself to the gym, to the shops, to the cafe to meet a friend, and not need a support worker or him or my parents or anybody to do anything for me. It's brilliant. Having my independence and my freedom is so key to me. But going back 10, 15 years, the place I was living in, I had to get someone to pick me up every morning and drive me 500 meters to the gym because I couldn't get myself up the hill. So when I knew that when I moved, I wanted to be in a place that I had complete freedom, and everyone chooses where they live because of, close to schools for the kids. But for me, as someone with a disability, having that independence and choice was key. But other parts of Australia are complete rubbish. I've travelled different places around the world, so comparatively, I know that it's not as bad as different places around the world. There are some places in Australia which do it really, really well. I know I've been to some streets in Adelaide, which are fantastic. Sydney, because they hosted the games, really stepped up the access around parts of Sydney, which has been fantastic. Brisbane, because we have the games coming here. I know there's a lot of roadworks happening all around Brisbane at the moment, and there will be for quite a few years, because we are making a real effort to improve our accessibility, not just for people with disabilities, but also for people without disabilities. Inclusive design and universal design, people with prams, people on bikes, and just make it generally better all around. I can think of one example where I went to a venue and I called them in advance, like I often do. I said, "Are you accessible?" I said, "Oh, absolutely, absolutely." And I went, and of course there was access to the front door, wheelchair ramp, got in fine. But once I was inside, the bar wasn't accessible, the bathrooms weren't accessible, and everything inside wasn't accessible, and there were stairs. And so accessibility, whether it's virtual, digital, or physical setup, is so much more than just one ramp front door. And it's really having that holistic consulting process with people with lived experience, who have a disability, to really understand what you're working with. And it does point out your blind spots and perhaps present things that you wouldn't have thought of before in the process.
You talked a little bit about it, but I would like to specify or to dream a little bit about your ideal inclusive world. So what would your ideal inclusive world look like?
That's ideal inclusive world would be, that's such a big question, because I know you guys are all about accessibility in the physical space, but my ideal inclusive world is, well, media and marketing is my love. And so I would love to see the 1 in 5 people approximately that have a disability be represented in media marketing and advertising, visible. I've said this before, but, and this is putting us both out of jobs, I would like to be unemployed. And by that, I mean, I work as a disability consultant, speaking with brands, business and industry about how to be inclusive and how to be diverse. But it would be great if there was no need for me to do the work that I do, because they all knew, and they're like, well, of course we know how to do it.
You also said to us in the beginning that on the one hand, you have disabilities that are visible and you have
Yes.
disabilities that are invisible. So how do you think the Australian society in comparison perceives invisible and visible disabilities?
I'm not 100% sure, because I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of people, and I hope there's more talk and more discussion around invisible disabilities. We've had some fantastic people recently with invisible disabilities like autism in the spotlight, which has just been fantastic. So hopefully that's opened up the conversations around it. Our Australian of the Year, Dylan Alcott, is in a wheelchair, which is brilliant, because it does bring attention to not just visible disabilities, but disabilities as a whole, because often when there is a visible disability, it subsequently just sort of has that flow-on effect, disabilities as a whole. But I've said many times that even though I have visible and invisible disabilities, it's my invisible disabilities that you can't see that affect me more. My speech has been affected from the brain injury, my eyesight, my concentration, my memory, all sorts of things that you don't see. Even though I'm in a wheelchair with a prosthetic leg, and when people meet me, they'll notice my fingertips are missing, but that doesn't stop me from getting around the world and traveling and everything like that. It's the fatigue and everything that affects me more. But I think Australian society is probably more accepting of visible disabilities, but and this could be true for all countries, and I'm not sure, but they have trouble understanding what they can't see. And that's probably something that it's something I certainly try to write about, in the hope that it can get more understanding. But the disability community is so diverse, and there are so many stories out there. Everyone is so unique that we need more stories from more people to be creating that narrative. And I certainly can't just be telling my story, or one or two people be telling their stories, because that's not a true reflection of the disability community and everybody's stories, and how truly broad it is.
Oh, you have one more question?
One last question.
One last question.
But well, it's a typical last question, I guess. So if you have a young disabled person in front of you, and there's one advice you could give this person, what advice would you give it? What you give the person?
I would say that you're capable of so much more than you think you are, or that society tells you that you are. Society, like the media, probably tells you you're here, but you're capable of so much more. So don't listen to the noise. And that would be my 2 cents worth of advice.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and to that, if you meet a person who never had contact with any disabled person, what advice would you give them regarding having contact with people with disabilities?
I'd say I'm only one person, so I'm certainly not reflective of everybody with a disability, but let's have coffee, sit down, have a chat, and I'd love to know about you because, yeah, I'm just like you, really. There's no reason to be scared. Some people like questions, some people don't, but I'm open to anything. So feel free to ask me anything you want.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for all the answers. I think there were some very interesting insights you gave to us. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
That's okay. Thank you very much, guys.